Study with Steph, cause she's the best. She's gonna help you get your CTS, yeah.
Ain't nothing can keep me down.
Stephanie.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Study with Steph. I don't honestly even know what episode we're on anymore, maybe 6 or 7. But I am talking about video systems today. With me is Karl Rosenberg. He is the technical trainer and regional applications specialist at Extron. Karl, thank you so much for joining me today and helping me understand video systems.
Very good. Well, thank you for having me. I was excited to hear about this. Anytime I can educate people and, do anything to further your education in the world of video, I love doing that. So as I was explaining to you before, I've been a teacher for quite a long time and, training for Extron and training and education is near to my heart, which is why I like working for Extron. So it is great and a pleasure to be able to also help train you. Good.
Yes. All right. Yeah. You told me you had a little presentation ready, which I always love in these.
Well, I'll tell you. So one of the things that happens when people approach me about training with video, and you held up the book, which everybody might have not have seen.
Oh, yeah.
The book is big, you're right.
Book.
And the book I had was years ago, and I'm sure it's a little different now, but there's some of the pieces and parts that are absolutely the same.
Right.
And one of the things I was going to do was kind of walk you through some of the prep, or what I refer to as the video glue of the industry as we go through that. So yeah, I'll begin to share my screen. Something I'll let you know, Steph, as we begin this is in the training world that I do, I try to have conversations. Ask me lots of questions.
Okay.
I always try to say it's not a webinar, it's a conversation. If you want to learn how to change the battery in your car key, you go to YouTube. But if you want to learn about philosophy, you have a conversation, and it's a little bit of a different environment. And so, yeah, we'll chat back and forth as we do this.
Sounds
and
good.
I'll be able to show you some of the pieces and parts. So let me move this over here, get my sort of Zoom studio prepared, as I always like to say. There we are. And you should be able to see something that says Study with Steph. Is that correct?
Yes. 100%.
Wonderful. And there I am. And, obviously Steph had kind of pre-introduced me earlier. So Karl Rosenberg, been in the business about 32 years, did a lot of rental staging, some rock concerts. And then I went to work for digital projection for a while, doing some of the research and development for the video projectors, which Steph and I are going to talk about. And then about the last 20 years, I've been working for Extron as a technical trainer. So something I always start off with, Steph, is this slide that you should be able to see right now. So this is a picture of my father. He's an intercultural relations teacher, and he spoke 6 languages fluently. And the reason I'm bringing this up for AV people in general is you'll notice there's no digital technology in here. There's no PowerPoint. He had to show every slide simultaneously, was my inside joke. And the idea here is that he had to train some people. By the way, for the audio folks who are watching, it's an SM57 microphone gaff taped to his chest. Remember, there's no wireless microphones back there.
All right.
So he spoke, that's right, see? So he spoke 6 languages, and he would set this event up and teach people around the world. And I would help him. So when you were at with your family at Disneyland or Disney World doing something, I was helping him do this. Something important he taught me, Steph. Can you read this?
If you don't know, ask.
Very good. And one of the things I'm so proud of you about doing is you are asking for assistance in the world of AV. So that's good. My father would be proud of you. I'm proud of you. And I think this is a great opportunity to sort of look into the world of AV and the glue. So I'm going to ask you a question.
Okay.
I'm going to prep you right now. What type of job did my father have?
He was an intercultural relations teacher.
Very good. You get the bell. So that's
Ooh, a bell sound.
Of course you get the bell. Yeah. Now, when you look at the list here, right away, you're like, magician, chef, fashion model. Okay,
right.
That. But you'll notice that a lot of the questions that you might get in the CTS, as long as you know a little bit of the nomenclature, it'll help you. So let's take a look at some things right away. Some rooms. So taking the CTS class, again, I'm very proud of you, is kind of like taking the glue of the industry test. You need all the glue in the pieces. So you look at a room like this, Steph, and okay, there's some TVs and there's some this and that, but what's the glue holding it together? That's kind of why I love working for Extron, is we're kind of the glue, and training is the glue for stuff like this. And as you look through some of these rooms, you'll really notice that it's the video glue that holds everything together. And it is a little bit of a mystical world. And something I'm going to tell you right now, guess what you're going to become? A video plumber. Write that down. A video
plumber. All right, writing it
down. All right, so Karl's going to teach you to be a video plumber. And make sure you're taking notes, by the way. A little piece of paper and a pencil. Sometimes I teach classes to younger college students. I say, everybody take out a piece of paper and a pencil, and they all look at me like I'm speaking French. What is this piece of paper and pencil you speak of, Mr. Rosenberg? Yeah, so you're a video plumber. So Steph, depending on the pipe you have, you can either send more data or less data down it. That's the trick to video. That's really it. And that's the technologies I teach. So this room looks amazing. You know, it's got a big video wall in it, touch panel, but they might want more information on their screens. So they're going to use a bigger pipe, all right? And I teach all these technologies for Extron, and it's fascinating that some people just kind of forget. That's all that's going on here. So anything you can do to immerse yourself in the pipe or the video plumbing, you should do that. All right. Now, I know it's a little bit hard now, Steph. You can't walk into these rooms as much, I'm sure, at the moment. But anything you can do to sort of touchy feel, I always refer to this as a technology petting zoo. You know, anything that you can go in and, you know, use all this equipment will help you. So write this down. There are 4 ways to do AV, specifically V, in 2021. 4 ways. You can run a cable. What a concept. You can use twisted pair. You can use HDMI, fiber optics, but running cables are uncompressed video. All right, for the most part. Number 2 is doing something called wireless. You've probably heard of this, wireless AV. There's a wide variety of products that you can run wireless video. Well, the problem is, Steph, when you do that, things are compressed, all right? And you lose resolution, you might lose color, you might lose refresh rate. And I remember from watching one of your other videos, one of my friends taught you what refresh rate, it's how many pictures are drawn per second on the screen.
Yes.
With wireless technology, you can't have high refresh, all right? And then there's this thing called streaming, number 3. Streaming has been around for a long time. It's not new, and it's the idea that we're taking audio and video and it's leaving the building and going somewhere else. A great example is what you and I are doing right now. We are Zooming, and my audio and video, you can hear me, and it's coming the other way. Now, Steph, what's the most important thing with this Zoom conference right now, this conversation? Would you say it's the video or it's the audio? What's the most important?
I would say it's the audio,
You are
because
correct.
if I could still hear you, you could still teach me. But if
And
I couldn't, then when we were just looking at each other, there wouldn't be
you're correct.
much else you could be able to do.
Right. If there was latency in our voices, that would be a problem too.
Right.
Very good. And an industry standard for this is something called H.264. That's been around forever. You should sort of know it and love it and understand the acronym. That's another class, but that is the streaming sort of de facto standard that people use at schools and universities. And then number 4, the new kid in town, something called AV over IP. Now, and actually Gary and I had a quick conversation about this when I called him a couple weeks ago. This is not a newer theory. This is not new to AV. The company I work for, Extron's had gadgets that do this for a long time. But people are now just kind of getting into it. The theory here, Steph, is that there's not a traditional uncompressed video switcher. It's a network switch.
Okay.
Now, the reason people like this also adds, people always ask me, what's the difference between streaming and AV over IP? AV over IP is all usually local. One room, maybe one building, one auditorium. Streaming is leaving the building. You and I are streaming now. We're not doing AV over IP. The other thing that happens with AV over IP is there's always control involved. Touch panels, stuff like that. All right? Always control. So those are the 4 ways to do video plumbing, Steph. And if you pick one, it helps. So when people ask you questions, they're like, well, what do you want to do here? Well, I really want to run a cable because I need to make sure I can critically see the images. Okay, we're going to do that. Well, I might want to do wireless. Well, if you do that, you might lose some frame rate. Probably not great for a film studio or a video application.
Mm-hmm.
All right, little quick history of some video stuff for you. That a lot of these things will certainly be, in the CTS. Is one of the things that we have in our world, Steph, is we don't have a lot of standards. We are the industry of specifications. You've probably heard that a lot. It's true.
Yes.
There are some standards, good old NTSC and PAL and CCAM, these things we used to use in the past, and ATSC, in essence, high definition video, all right? And nobody has a CRT television anymore. I mean, holy smokes, it looks like an antiquated thing. If you went into a hotel room and now and saw one of those, you'd gasp, like, oh my gosh, what an old hotel this is.
Yeah, check out.
You're about right. Absolutely. Well, the nice thing about where we're headed is when HDTV, there's some easy aspects of this. You get a bigger aspect ratio, which makes things look more lifelike. Somebody will always tell you, and I will tell you, your eyes are left and right of each other, so we see in wide aspect ratio. This is another reason why it just looks better for humans. And of
Yeah.
course, there's more resolution. So this is all good. And you may get questions of the different aspect ratios on the test and what they are. And they're usually a reference or a ratio. And like a 4:3 aspect ratio is 1.33 times something of whatever the width is. And then the other ones are like 178 and on we go, based on the width of the screen. But the fan favorites are 4:3 and 16:9. All right.
Yep.
So some more history. When I first started, we were doing a lot of what is called RGBHV. This is analog, all right? And it was the
Yeah.
kind of the best way to make video signals. It was completely decoded. Now, write this word down, decoded.
Okay.
The reason for that is you'll notice even in history, we've been using encoding. We still say this today all the time, even in AV over IP. We have an encoder and we have a decoder. We have a decoder, we have an encoder. And when you're using those words, there's history to it. The theory was all beautiful video signals coming out of computers were RGBHV with the horizontal and vertical sync. And then the broadcast standards used usually 3-wire technology, some sort of a component broadcast standard, all right? And then, well, wait a minute, Steph, we need to get this signal to your house. We can't run 5 gigantic cables, and don't forget there's going to be left and right audio as well.
Yeah.
So what do? We'll encode it to RF. And so now we've got, talk about video plumbing, we have 50 channels of television all running down one pipe. All right, so now Steph, what do you think will look better? One video signal that's running down 5 wires, or 300 video signals running down one?
Probably the first one
That's
running down
correct.
5.
Well done. Yeah, it's the more decoding you do, the better off it is. And this is also the essence of streaming. We have to encode and decode and encode and decode, and eventually you're kind of throwing everything away. And no wonder the images don't always look so great when you look on the internet or YouTube or whatever. So encoding and decoding is kind of the key to all of this.
Got it.
And usually these high resolutions were what we did all the time. We ran 5-wire everywhere, and we didn't want to do RF, but in a church or a school or something, they almost had to do it.
Right.
Now, a little bit about the analog digital world. I know that again, somebody else had mentioned this, but here's kind of the video side of it.
Yeah.
Analog is a variable waveform. And with analog video signals, the theory was you could kind of boost these signals long distances. All right, we used to call them distribution amplifiers, interfaces, and you would push more and push more. With digital signals, you can't do that. All right, they're on and off, they're individual pulses, and they'll only go as far as they go before they disintegrate, is an easy way to say it. The word reclocking, write that down, may come up. So I need a product to reclock the video signal. In essence, you're retiming it, all right? So it comes out, again, nice and sharp on the other side. Now, what is the main difference for you when you're making these decisions? Now, first of all, we don't use a lot of analog anymore too much, but there's going to be questions like that they may ask you. Now, digital technology, the distances are set. Hey, I can go this far with this kind of cable at this resolution and this data rate and so on and so forth. Now, let me ask you another question. Which one of these clocks is better, Steph? Which one's better?
The not digital clock, because you can see the seconds.
But so now there's some truth there. Well, very good. I love your answer. Yeah, the theory there is that some people would say, well, this clock is exact, like a digital video signal. But it doesn't give you sometimes as much information as you might need.
Yeah.
That's correct. Now, the other thing, too, is this. You can't time target on a digital clock. You know what time targeting is? This is where if you glanced over here and your class started at 3, Steph,
I can
much
see
time do
how
you have?
much I can see how much time has passed. Yeah.
very good. And you can't do that. I don't know if you've known this, but in airports, they were putting digital clocks everywhere and people were missing their planes because if it's 12:38 and my plane leaves at 1, I have to do math. So
Yeah.
and then suddenly all the
means-
digital clocks disappeared and they started putting analog clocks back up. It's a fact that they have a lot of analog clocks in universities and schools for the same reason. It's kind of the same thing
Yeah.
in digital, all right? Good. Some other things that you may hear on the test or people talk to you about is the word bandwidth. I have high bandwidth, I have low bandwidth. and the word data rate. So bandwidth is an antiquated way to say things. Write it down, but we don't say things have high bandwidth, low bandwidth. Now I know my audio people will, do a little bit of a different dance, but we talk data rate, data rate, data rate. It's all about data rate. Okay. Now, in the old days, we used to say things, Steph, were like, wow, we have 150 megahertz and 300 megahertz and 450 megahertz at minus 3 dB. All these switchers we make, wow, look at all that. Well, I mean, this is almost embarrassing that, nowadays we are talking incredibly high data rates, not
Yeah.
megahertz. We're talking, gigabits.
Okay.
I'm going to give you 3 numbers that when I teach people, I always make sure they leave my classes and kind of understand.
Okay.
Number one, 10 gigabits. This is about the data rate coming out of a standard computer, Steph. So if you walked into a classroom or a boardroom with a kind of a regular laptop, let's say, what's coming out of it on the HDMI uncompressed connector is about 10 gigabits. You've heard of 1080p 60, 4K 30. That is the resolution followed by the refresh. All right.
Okay.
So standard classrooms and boardrooms. When the HDMI signals go up to the newer versions like 2.0, all right, the data rate changes because you can now spit out 4K 60, not 4K 30. That's twice as many frames. So the data rate goes up. And that number I want you to write down is 18. So the first number I gave you was 10. The second one was 18. And then eventually, one day down the road, somebody may say to you, I've got some sort of an 8K signal or maybe some sort of 4K signal that's running at 120 pictures per second. That's a pretty high data rate. It's almost 8K. And that number would be just under 50. Let's just say 47, 48, something around there. Right? I think technically it's 48. So those 3 things are important for you because it's the essence of all encoding and decoding. So Steph, if you were to want, somebody said to you, I need to stream a 10 gigabit laptop down to, Zoom or something like that. Well, we can't do 10 gigabits downstream. So the pipe would have to be smaller. So now you're compressing the signal. And so as long as you understand that based on the design you might be doing, that's 3 different rooms. So these are usually college classrooms and boardrooms or learning spaces. These are usually medical applications. In this whole 8K thing, 47 to 50 gigabits, that's usually medical and military stuff.
Right.
And so everything we do now, we talk data rate. And as long as you know the resolution, and as long as you know the refresh rate, and you ask a couple more questions, you can always figure this out. So it's pretty easy to do. The thing that does make it difficult, I can understand, is each HDMI connection has its own data rate specification. They don't make it easy for you, do they?
No.
No. So when you see those things. So here's a question for you. See, we're going to practice as we go along, Steph.
Okay.
All right. What uncompressed data rate switcher might you need for maybe a classroom in a university? So somebody calls you up and says, Steph, I'm trying to design a system. We just walk in with a bunch of HDMI cables and we plug them into a switcher onto a screen. What might you use?
The 10 gigabit.
Well done. There's your angel music.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome. Steph, welcome to the world of data rate. Now you understand. Yeah, it's true. So the theory here is that you're not making, 100 meg, nobody does that anymore.
Right.
And 3G is kind of a broadcast thing. And so somebody would then say, well, I want to stream it, Steph, somewhere else. Okay, well, we're going to take your 10 gigabit signal and I'm going to run it through a, magic box, and we're going to stream it at a lower data rate onto the internet. That's how that all works. Good. Well done. So let's talk about some video signal characteristics, HDMI, for example, and all these cables you might buy, all right, or somebody might ask you about. Most of the things that you purchase, all right, are boxes that do digital bit streams. Write that down, digital bit streams. It is uncompressed digital bit streams. That's what these boxes do, all right? These interfaces, these switchers that you buy, send uncompressed digital bit streams. Now, there's choices. You can send it down an HDMI cable, whose distances may vary. I'll talk about that. And you can now send them down twisted pair cables. Now, the nice thing about using twisted pair, which we'll mention later, is that gives you a lot more distance. Usually, Steph, 100 meters. So that took a lot of the guessing out of the old analog days. Like, holy smoke, I'm running this analog signal. How far could you run it? So there was an old joke, Steph, that people would ask me during the class, Karl, how far can you run an analog signal? And I would go, the official answer is, it depends. And they're like, that's not the real answer. We'd all joke at Extron, like, yeah, that's kind of the real answer.
It's
I
kind of
don't know
the
what
real
kind of
answer.
cable you're using. I don't know what kind of resolution you have. I don't know what kind of interface you have. And so we're like, well, it kind of depends. And this works. This works great. So if somebody asks you, well, hey, I need to be able to get this digital signal to go, so you can, hey, we can use twisted pair. It'll go 100 meters, all right? The answer for the HDMI may vary a little bit. I'm going to talk about that in a second. But these switchers, distribution systems that you buy from different folks, that's what they do. All right.
Okay.
They take these digital signals and they reclock them, as I mentioned before, to make sure they're nice and sharp. So as they go into the switchers, they're nice and perfect. And when they come out, they're nice and perfect. And this is actually kind of what they look like in real life. If you had a product called a Jaybird machine, I don't even know if you need to write that down, but it's a very expensive system that you can actually check this. So I'm going to go through some digital signal types that's, you might get asked. First one, USB. I'm sure you're familiar with USB. You've plugged lots of gadgets in over your life to USB. And the reason that it is an interesting connector is because it was invented a long time ago, really to plug in like printers and things. And now we're plugging in everything with it.
Yeah.
Please note it doesn't go very far. It only
Right.
goes about 16 feet. And it's compressed. It's
Okay.
compression technology. So you can't really use this to run some super high resolution gadget unless you're using a C connector in alt mode, and that is also a different conversation. But for the most part, you need to make this longer. There's two types of USB, Steph, and you need to understand that someone's going to say, oh, I want a USB camera in the front of the room. All right, well, that's fine. It's going to look the way it is, but you want to try to sell them a professional camera. And then there's these things called HID, Human Interface Device. They are different. And your client, and the test may actually ask you, the client's trying to plug a keyboard and a mouse into a system. What could be a potential problem? And the potential problem is the product doesn't support HID. It only supports video, or vice versa is usually what happens. Depending on the computer you may have, Steph, it may actually have ports on them that only work with HID devices, and some that work with USB 2.0 devices like these cameras. All right.
But does it just look like a USB, like to?
Yes, very good. Unfortunately, all the connectors look the same. That is correct. So there's some newer technologies where they've got little blue connectors and things on them. I'll show you right here. I have a slide.
Who designed that if they're different, but they look the same?
Thank you very much.
Can I give
Here's
them
your
a
bill.
call?
Yeah. So remember, USB wasn't made for AV. It was made for your house. Remember, the pot of gold really for all this USB stuff is easy connectivity to your computer, which is called, by the way, a host. Make a note of that.
Okay.
All USB technology needs a host. I have a USB camera here. Hello, I can see you. You can see me. That USB camera is plugged into my laptop. My laptop's its host. Can't do anything without it.
Yep.
What happened with the USB, though, is as time passed, the older USB now, which was called 2.0, was used on these older A connectors, and then they created the B connectors, and now we've got C connectors. Don't be obsessed with the type of connector.
Okay.
Steph, be obsessed with the speed that's running down the connector.
Okay.
And there could be a question that says something like, my USB-C connection is not spitting out, a high data rate or something like that. What could be the problem? Well, remember, the C connector can spit out 480 megabits. It kind of has nothing to do with it. It's that the product can't support it.
Okay.
So there's newer products now that can support USB speeds of 3.2. It's pretty high. Now, notice remember the earlier little lesson I gave you? What are we already talking about here? Data rates. What did I tell you, Steph? It's everywhere.
Yeah.
It's embedded in the video business. So USB is all about data rates too. You're going to open up a box and it's going to give you some camera and it's going to tell you the data rate of what that camera or that gadget runs at. Okay. A couple of broadcast standards. You may have heard of SDI, Serial Digital Interface, and HDSDI and 3G HDSDI. Now you know why the 3G is there. It's 3 gigabit. Good. See, it's all about data rate. And these standards were used for the broadcast world, usually using a single BNC connector. And it was nice. You got your video, your audio, kind of everything coming down one wire if that was the need. And it would come out the other side, usually the video side of it. And it got bigger, faster, stronger. This was low resolution, and then 3G HDSDI was higher resolution, up to about 3 gigabits. You'll also notice, just for the record, it's actually 2.97, but we rounded it up to 3 because nobody wanted to call it 2.97 gigabits, and all of the price. So, there is a little bit of, right. There's also a newer technology out now, which somebody could ask you, called NDI. Do you know what that is?
I've heard of it, but I would be lying if I told you
That's
I knew
okay.
what it was.
Network device interface. Write that down.
Okay.
Network device interface. A company called Newtek developed it. And it is a very interesting way that you can plug in modern day video broadcast equipment, and they all communicate with each other through a network. It's like a little baby AV over IP system for broadcast. That's an easy way to write it down, Steph.
Okay. So like baby AV over IP system for broadcast equipment.
Broadcast only. The nice thing about it is it's technology kind of agnostic. You can plug in different people's products and they all work together. TriCaster, Yamaha, whatever the application might be.
So it like makes systems like interoperable.
Very good. Interoperability.
Okay. That's like another big industry buzzword for you.
Here's your clapping for using that word. Well done. Yes. And a lot of the HD-based T stuff I'll talk about later. And streaming, H.264 is a interoperability. You could buy one of my pieces of equipment, plug it into somebody else's. It's all H.264. It all works. Good. So sort of the grandmother of video signals is this thing called TMDS. This will undoubtedly be somewhere on the test when you're taking it. Transition minimized differential signaling. And I'll have you write that acronym down if you don't know it. I apologize about the acronym overload. It's like drinking from a fire hose, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. No way around that. Transition minimized differential signaling was developed a long time ago with, its cousin, sort of LVDS, this low voltage differential signaling. But this is what we use. And most of these modern day signals still use it. Developed a long time ago for high speed, uncompressed digital transport, in essence. All right. There's that data transmission, data rate. It is used by HDMI and DVI. That would be something that there could be a test question about.
Okay.
And depending on how many links you have, or some people call them lanes in these systems, you can run more data. All right? But it's uncompressed. That's why DVI and HDMI use it. DVI, wonderful connector, so to speak, that was made a long time ago. This was actually kind of a great thing. Hey, it actually screwed in, it was held on, it was digital, wasn't held in by friction. The issue with this is it didn't always support audio, and it didn't always support HDCP. And so this connector kind of fell off the wayside. Some military people and medical people used it all the time. The schools thought it was the greatest thing ever, and it all fell apart. HDMI, high definition multimedia interface, been out for a long time as well, and its big claim to fame was it can do the video uncompressed, it can do audio, has HDCP compliancy for copyright protection, and it can do something. Do you know what CEC is?
Mm-mm.
Consumer Electronics Control. Please write that down.
Okay.
CEC is an application where you can actually use this one cable to turn other things on and off. Prime example. Have you ever turned on a Blu-ray player and it turned on your TV? Have you ever turned on an Xbox or a PlayStation and it also turned on your TV? Yes. That's using CEC. So as a gamer and an esports enthusiast here at my house, if I hold down my PlayStation button on my remote, it turns on my PlayStation and turns on the television. There you have it. DVI can't do that, which right away made HDMI the new player in town. And for the audiophiles watching this or listening, it does all sorts of great audio stuff. Good. The connectors, all sorts of vast. And this is one of the things I mentioned to you before. The issue with HDMI was as the cables, Steph, got longer, the problem was that cliff would not always show up on the screen. And so it would be quite clear what would happen. You'd get no image, right? They refer to this in the business. I'll back up a little bit so I can draw something. Whoops. They refer to this as the digital cliff effect. So here is sort of a distance chart. This is a long distance of feet. What would happen to these digital signals is they'd be good, 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 and they would get to a distance, whatever distance that was, and they would fall
There'd
off the
be
cliff.
nothing. Okay.
Correct. In the analog world, Steph, you'd start with the signal nice and good, and it would just kind of slowly dwindle.
Right.
But it would be there at, a
Yeah.
million feet away or something, right? And so that's an easy way to troubleshoot digital signals. And so again, there could be test questions that say, client added a 100-foot HDMI cable to a room. What could be the problem? Well, you can't run those signals
Yeah.
without some sort of special extra sauce built into the cable.
So
or
the
built
answer
into
would
the
be
cable.
that like the cable would be too long and
Very
you
good.
can't run a signal.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I will tell you honestly, when people now ask me, Karl, how far can you run an HDMI digital cable? And my answer is as short as possible
Right.
because of the same problem. I've got lots of stories where a school, somebody installed a very short cable and a wall plate at a university. Somebody lost the cable, and then somebody just went out to, Circuit City or wherever and bought a new cable for low money and
Yeah.
plugged like a 300-foot cable in or something ridiculous.
And
And
then it
they're
doesn't
wondering
work.
like, why can't I get any images on the screen? Can't happen. Now, this is a chart that I just want you to see that I don't need you to read, but I need you to have an
Okay.
epiphany. The epiphany is these cables and HDMI are getting so different. There's the standard speed, there's the high speed, there's premium speed, and now there is ultra speed. Everything just gets bigger, faster, and stronger. And what you just need to understand from this graphic, and not to read it, is the data rates over here just get higher and higher and higher.
Okay.
So when you buy cables, you don't buy them on some bandwidth specification. You buy them on a data rate specification. Write that down, because that is something that people are going to ask all the time, and certainly would be a question somebody would ask you. Now, what allows you to run these uncompressed video signals down twisted pair cable? So this was invented a while back, HD-based-T. You've probably heard of this. And this technology is in a lot of people's equipment. And the main thing you need to understand is this is not networking. And this is uncompressed. It is an uncompressed technology that is not networked. The thing that's confusing, Steph, is it uses Ethernet cables or RJ5 connectors. So when people see this, they go, I can plug this into a network? You can't. It is uncompressed digital video running down an Ethernet cable, but it is not Ethernet.
Okay. Because the one that is Ethernet is AV over IP because it runs
That's
over
correct.
the signal.
Very good.
Okay.
Very good. And I'll actually have a little test question I'll go over here in a second. You are correct. So this is the stuff that, as I said, this is kind of number one. Hey, you want to run a cable with uncompressed digital video? You can use HD-based-T. And lots of manufacturers make the equipment that does that. All right. So you can actually get those things built into the system. Small meeting rooms. This would be a perfect example of that. So you buy a interface. You would run a twisted pair cable. And then you'd run the HDMI shorter distances. Now, Steph, this is a great example of this. This is the HD-based-T technology that is embedded in these boxes. All right. And the issue is that you would then have short little tiny HDMI cables and short little tiny HDMI cables on the opposite sides. So in the old days, we would run, massively long analog cables. And now, these are little tiny 10-footers, 15-footers, whatever. And these cables are sometimes a foot because these little boxes hang on the back.
Right.
And that is sort of the new world topology. Run longer video digital distances over HD-based-T between the interfaces. Does that make sense?
Yes. Is
Now
a
people see
twisted
this.
pair cable the same thing as a category cable?
It is. So let me give you a
Okay.
quick scoop on that. A Cat X cable, category cable, which you see I actually have written down here.
Which X just means it can be like Cat 5, Cat 5e,
You
Cat
got
6,
it. Well done.
right?
Cat 5, Cat 6, that's it. What you need to write down, though, is to do something like this, Steph, it needs to be shielded.
Okay.
Now, there'll be some arguments out there in the industry of, well, Karl said it needs to be shielded. It should be shielded. I recommend it, Extron recommends it, everybody I know that runs high data rate signals down shielded twisted pair needs to use shielded to prevent something called alien crosstalk. So yeah, don't use what is referred to in the business, Steph, as UTP, unshielded twisted pair. You don't want to use that.
Why
You
do they
wanna
make
use-
it?
Well, they use that for regular networks. It's great for regular network stuff, but not great for what we're doing. All right.
Okay.
Somebody asks you why. You go, my data rates are really high in the video business. And your data rates in the network business at the moment are not as high as what we're trying to do here. So EDID, prepare for your EDID presentation. So
Okay.
EDID, extended display identification data. This will for sure be on the test. Every time I talk to somebody who took it, they're, Karl, you were right. It was on there. Extended display identification data. So EDID is something that is inside of us. It binds us. It holds us together. It's like the Force from Star Wars, Steph. All right?
Okay.
A little bit of a serious joke there. EDID like almost runs our industry. It's hysterical.
Okay.
This technology allows you, and it's been around for a long time, as you can see, 1996, and we used to call it data display channel. This technology, which is everywhere. I'll give you a quick little example. There's a chip inside this monitor, this TV, whatever the heck you got, and it communicates with the laptop, the PC, whatever you have over here. And when you turn on the PC, it communicates and it asks down the digital bit stream, hey, what are you doing here? And the TV or the monitor goes, hey, I'm a Dell native 1080p monitor and I want some audio. And then the PC goes, okay, there you go.
Okay.
Now, the reason this is so important is because if you ever, and this will for sure be on the test, somebody's going to say something like, I've got the wrong resolutions on my screen, Steph. You know, why am I not getting 1080p or why am I not? EDID is responsible for resolution, desired resolution. It is responsible for the audio, which people forget all the time. So if somebody ever calls you and says, I'm not getting any audio, you can go, well, it's probably an EDID problem. All right. I'm not getting the right resolution. Well, probably have a needed problem. Hey, my aspect ratio is wrong. It's probably a needed problem. Hey, I can't get anything to show up on the screen. It's a needed problem. I mean, EDID is responsible for everything. And then I teach a class that's like almost 8 hours long that talks just about EDID. And I'm trying to give it to you in like 2 minutes. It's crazy. The beauty here is that if EDID is passed properly through the HDMI cable, which it should be, point to point, the appropriate resolution will then show up on the appropriate screen and you will hear the appropriate audio. All right. The issue that happens, Steph, is this. Not everybody's products support EDID. Now, Extrons do, and there's a lot of others, obviously, but you just need to be very careful because somebody might say, hey, I'm running 1080p into this switcher and I need 1080p over here, but why am I getting like 720p down here? Well, you're having an EDID management problem. All right.
Okay.
And it is a big problem because this kind of leads you into the end of this part, which is the whole screen resolution thing. HDCP is the same thing. We got our high bandwidth digital content protection. This came out a long time ago. Another one of the disasters in AV, as I like to call it. Suddenly everybody went, Karl, I have to put Blu-ray players everywhere. So with the high digital content protection, mainly Apple and Blu-ray players, you have to make sure that the entire system is HDCP compliant. So the easy way to say this, Steph, make sure all of your products that you're buying are HDCP compliant. That's an easy way out. Now, this is why you would need to be careful. In the world of streaming, if we're taking some information from a classroom and we are maybe streaming it out to some box that does H.264, these products can be HDCP compliant, but you have to manage this to make sure that the streams can go places. An easy test question would be something like this. Hey, I plugged in my Blu-ray player and I can't get anything to show up on the screen. You know, it's turned green or something. And the main answer would probably be your system, whatever you bought, whatever TV or whatever you got going on, is not HDCP compliant.
HDCP. Okay.
Okay, you had asked me about some displays.
Yeah.
So these new displays that are out here have new technologies in them. Some of them, not new, but they have different light technology. You've heard of laser projectors? All right, so what's in these projectors? Well, they're still using LCD and DLP engines, Steph. So the engines are still the same, all right? The difference is the light source is not a xenon bulb or a metal halide bulb. It's a laser, just like in the movies. Now, don't get crazy. It's not like a burning red, green, blue. Everybody thinks it's like some burning. It's a blue laser that runs through dichroic mirrors. and those mirrors turn the light into the 3 different colors. These new laser projectors are great, mainly because they can last for 10 years, and they never get dim. It's a little bit of an added cost, but it does work, all right? Organic LED, or OLED, is a little bit different because the actual pixels are the light source themselves. That's why these TVs, these OLED TVs, are so thin and why they have such good black levels. All right? They're still a little expensive, but they're great for image quality. They give you all of the colors, 10-bit, billions of colors. It's great. All right? LCD is out there, and it's been around there for a long time. Different video projectors. The only thing here to remember is when you're buying an LCD product, don't worry so much about the LCD. That's what makes the image. Be worried about what is the backlight.
What's the backlight?
Correct.
Because
now, you've heard of an LCD, LED. I mean, there's a whole, which I'm going to show you a picture of.
So an LED is just an LCD, but it's backlit by LED lights, right?
You got it. That's exactly it.
Okay.
These products all do a very similar thing.
Okay.
They're using LCDs, but now there's an LED bulb in the back. All right. And these LED TVs have lots of little tiny bulbs. They'll try to draw a bunch of dots all over it. And it's a very uniform kind of white. The colors are better. It's more uniform. In the past, there were literally like fluorescent bulbs in the back.
Okay.
OLED is that same thing I told you, organic LED. They're very thin. The images are incredibly crisp. The black levels are incredible. If you're a movie buff, that's the kind of stuff you should watch or buy if you can afford it. You may have seen some pictures of some screens coming up out of floors and things.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, I'm kind of a believer that I think the future of some of the AV industry might actually involve this, where Steph, 6-7 years from now, you and I are going to install a classroom. You and I would walk in with what appears to be a big carpet on our shoulders. And we would, in essence, roll the carpet up on the screen and like staple it to the wall. And I mean, not actually. But that's pretty much what's going to happen. And you see this stuff in movies and, it's wrapped around pillars and things like that.
Right.
QLED is actually a technology by Samsung. What they did is they used traditional LCD panels with backlit LEDs. There's all your acronyms. So it's not really anything different. The difference is they've got some of their own special sauce built in so the colors look better.
Okay.
Right? Remember, it's all about color representation. If the colors look better, it looks more real. All right?
Okay.
I know some of the little just basics here about some projection technology. Somebody may say to you, RP, FP, front projection, rear projection. This is just the idea that you're going to have the projector in the front or the back.
Okay.
There will be a test question, undoubtedly, something like this. And it's going to say something like, what are the advantages and disadvantages? Well, let me give you the easy ones right away. When this light is shining here, it's actually reflecting back into the people's faces. The images are brighter, all right? The issue here is the light is going through, in essence, to see, what the people are looking at. But because the rear projection room is darker, you can usually then turn on more lights out here. Now, with these new laser projectors, Steph, this is not so much the end of the world. Some of these laser projectors are incredibly bright. And this would be something that would be on a test question where it might say something like, well, what lumen output or what nit do you need for your display based on the light that's in the room, all right? So lumens are how you measure projectors. Nits, N-I-T-S, nits, is how you measure a TV display in terms of brightness. And some things that are going to be on the test is to understand resolution and how it works and why I need more and why I need less. There are some things that people are going to ask you for. I want UHD, I want, 8K, I want 1080p. How do you know what to give them? And there's an easy answer for this. Write this down. It's called critical viewing.
Okay.
What is your critical viewing here? Oh, Steph, we just do PowerPoint. Oh no, Steph, I have to be able to zoom in on medical images. They're going to tell you right away. As long as you know their answer to the critical viewing question, you're good. All right?
Okay.
And that'll sort of give you and this is just a little idea, are they going to sit really close to the TV, the projector? Are they going to sit far away? And depending on those applications, you're going to need some different answers.
Right.
All right? Now,
so if their critical viewing is just a PowerPoint, they're probably not going to need like an 8K.
Very good. and the resolution will change. And so
Okay.
will the throw distance. Very good. I mean, excuse me, the size of the display.
Yep.
Now, if you wear glasses, you'll know what this is. If you don't, this is a scene chart. So what
Okay.
I'm showing you is actually kind of what you're going to be doing too. If
Yeah.
you can go with the end user, and this is right out of the sort of the Avixa handbook, if you will, and figure out what point font they might be using. And you can actually measure this, and this is called an element. Please write that down, an element, all right? What element pixel font might they use? Now, they may kind of laugh at you, like, what are you talking about? We just use PowerPoint stuff. And then you can go, okay, I get it. You don't care. And then some
Yeah.
other people go, oh, no, we have very small font here. So this all comes from visual acuity. There's going to be something in the test that's going to ask you what an arc minute is. An arc minute. This is right out of, your optometrist. An arc minute is the limit of visual acuity. How far away can we see something? All right?
Okay.
The limit of normal human visual acuity. Write that down. Now, I'm going to give you an easy analogy. Write down this. I call it the screen door effect.
Okay.
So, Steph, you go to your house, your apartment, wherever, and if you close your screen door and you stand right in front of it,
Yeah.
you see it, don't you?
Yes.
Okay, what happens if you back up 30, 40 feet in your house or your apartment? What happens to the screen door when you look outside?
It looks like it's not there. You can just
It
see right
disappears.
outside.
Very good.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And it's the same thing in AV.
Okay.
And your job is to use there's some math to find out the arc minute, and then kind of jokingly, as my idea is, let's build you a screen door. how many pixels do you need to see? All right.
Okay. Yeah.
Does that help you with that analogy?
Mm-hmm.
Good. Have you ever heard of a retina display? Apple and everybody. Okay. All
Yep.
they're doing at Apple is they're measuring the arc minute. So if I use my cell phone for a second, you kind of look at me. Apple did the math, where if I hold my phone about this far away, they measured the arc minute per the element, and they're like, hey, I should hold my phone about this far away. They did all the math. That's why the resolution on your screen's fine. You hold your cell phone 50 feet away from your face, you can't see it as well, obviously. They did the measurements, right?
Of how far typically you hold your phone from your face?
Exactly.
Okay.
So they measured the arc minute, figured out the retina display, and then they created their resolution on the screen.
Got it.
Which is what you do. They measured the element, if you will. So there's two things that are going to show up on the test.
Okay.
Something called discus and the theory, which is a little older but still used, so you should know what it is, for throw distances and displays, called 468.
Okay.
Please write those down. All right. The older one, I don't want to call it the older one because it's even when I was teaching at Infocom a bit, I would use this. It's called the 468. So this kind of 468 idea is this is a ratio times the height of the screen. Make a note of that. Times the height of the screen. And there's two ways you make these decisions. And I kind of mentioned to you before what they are. There's something called the BDM math, which is your basic decision making, which I call PowerPoint. Your client says, look, we just do PowerPoint in here. And you're like, okay, that's pretty basic image quality. Let's use the BDM math, which might be, 6 or 8 times the height of the screen or something like that. And then somebody says to you, oh, no, Steph, I have analytical decision-making occurring here, which they call ADM, or what I call critical viewing. So with one simple question, you can design an environment or an AV ecosystem based on the size of the screen. If you're doing nothing but PowerPoint in here, we'll do, this times the height of the screen. Oh, wait a minute, you're doing analytics in here? I'm going to make that, smaller, 4, because we're going to be sitting closer because you're trying to make some decisions.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense?
Mm-hmm.
So this 468 rule, you just kind of do the math. If you think it's BDM, you would take the height of the screen, times it by 6 or 4 or whatever, and then bang, you have how far away people would sit. All right?
Okay.
Good. Now, that was kind of the old way to do it.
Yes.
There is a new way called
new way.
discus. Now, what this does, and I'm going to show you a little bit more here, and that acronym will kill anybody in the acronym world. I love this. Display image size for 2D content and audiovisual systems. That's a
Do I
long
have to, do
acronym.
I have to remember what that stands for?
I know, and unfortunately, I would have no doubt that there's going to be a test question about this
Okay.
because that is one of the longest acronyms I've ever seen in my life.
This is the worst acronym I've ever read.
I know the AV industry is so bad with this. I think it's also one of the things if you can talk to your, office mates, workmates, and just be like, hey, let's talk some AV because I need to be able to edit your HDCP with 10 gigabit, 2D content with my discus, throwing in my, it's brutal. All right, so did you write that down? Good.
Yes.
All right, so now
Took
what
me a
this
minute.
does is it assumes, oh, by the way, this happened in 2016. All right.
Okay, so
So
yes,
kind of the
pretty
468 was everything
fresh.
before that, and now we're doing this. So this assumes a little bit that you're going to be using some higher resolution. Of course,
Okay.
it's modern
Yes.
AV, it's 2021. And it's based on something called the element of the presentation. That is what is different. Please make a note. So somebody, a quick test question might say, what technology is the basis for making decisions in Discus? And you could say, oh, the element of the presentation. It's font size. Font size, font size. You figure out the font size. I mean, you could theoretically go in with a tape measure and actually measure it. And then based on the font size and what you're doing in terms of the, I'll back up a slide to show you, your BDM or ADM. So I know, again, more acronyms, sorry.
Mhm.
You then would put that into the math into the equation and it would show you. So now here's what
Okay.
the math looks like. If you go to the online calculator on the Avixa website, you'll see it in here.
Yes.
And I'll just, I can go live to it if you want to, but you'd put in inches, so make that a note of that, and you'd start to put some information in here like, okay, so the person's going to be sitting about 48 inches up. We're going to be doing HD TV, so that's like a 178, 177 aspect ratio. And then you would start to put in the image height, again in inches, 60, and then the element. Now, there's a percentage for these. And I'm going to go live here in just a second and show you that.
Okay.
And then when you put this information in, what it does is actually gives you the distance of how far away everybody should be seated. So I'm going to ask you a question, besides the fact I always say to all of my students, keep doing AV, keep doing what you're doing, keep studying. I hope that was helpful. I want
was
you to
very
tell me
helpful.
now from your notes, as a teacher,
Okay.
I'm always going to flip the classroom. Tell me 3 things that you learned.
Okay. I learned that DISCUS stands for Display Image Size for 2D Content and Audiovisual Systems, and it was developed in 2016. I learned about the 468 rule and how that's not used as much anymore, but still
Right?
used.
Or it's a good guesstimation, so to speak.
Yes.
Yeah. Good.
I learned that for a laser projector, the engine is still the same, but that the light source is a laser.
Perfect. Wow.
And I learned about EDID, Extended Display Identification Data.
And then that is the force that holds the AV world together, just like
Yes.
Star Wars.
And that I
Well,
can never forget it.
Hey, with that, I also want to just kind of finish up something I always do at the end here. I want to make sure
Yeah.
that you take this information that I've given you today, spread it not only throughout your friends, but the world of AV. Make sure that everything you're doing, you talk about AV all the time. And if you ever have any questions, you can call me, and I'll be your teacher here to support you. So thank you very much for the time, Steph.
Thank you so
And thank
much
you,
for
Rave,
taking the
as
time.
it was a pleasure. So if there's anything I can ever do for you, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
I'll stop my
All
music
right.
and go back to my regular thing.
All right. Yep. And for everyone watching and or listening, you can find more by going to Rave. I will link Karl's LinkedIn so you can add him as well if you have any questions for him also. But thank you again. Thank you so much for being here.
Very good.
All right.
Study with Steph, cause she's the best. She's gonna help you get your CTS, yeah.
Ain't nothing can keep me down.
Stephanie.